Shit, man, the plane's taking off now. The plane is absolutely taking off. Welcome aboard. Happy Football Monday. We always start the program out with Big Sills, and it is a big week. It is a big week. By the way, crazy times right now in our country. And we're very proud that you come here for at least a couple hours to get away from some of the stuff that's going on in the political world. So we're not going to bog you down with any of that bullshit. You get enough of that each and every single day. So today, we got stuff, again, to get you out of that. Because, look, dude, I want Republicans and Democrats in here. Unlike some places, I want you guys all in here. So to sit around and talk a little bit of the politics and the political things that went on this past weekend, it's counterproductive. We're just proud that you guys chose us. With all the vehicles and all the places that you can go, you choose us. And we can't thank you enough, man. We just can't thank you enough. As I said, we're on the runway. Tomorrow, they show up to training camp. Many teams, including the Eagles, show up to the NovaCare Center, and they start their journey to see who will become the next NFL champion. I mean, the journey starts now. By the way, just because the roster that you see on paper on July 22nd, how many times have we ever said this? I mean, hey, 2022 or 2022, we saw one of the best rosters in Eagle history. And we saw it from day one, and we saw it the final game in the Super Bowl. Very rarely do you see stuff like that. So you're not really going to see that kind of stuff. Hey, Prince, right, dog. Let's get away from that for 4 hours. Right? Let's get away from that stuff for 4 hours here. I want to start the program out by doing this. I saw John Harbaugh made a comment. He was asked a question. By the way, Angelo Cataldi will be with us at 3:30. The legendary WIP host will be with us. Last time he was on, fireworks were shot across the bow, numerous topics. He will be with us at 3:30, the legendary sports talker. Xander's moved up in the rotation. We are putting him at 4:30. So, but I want to get back to John Harbaugh. He was asked a question about Lamar Jackson. And I love this. And I'll ask you a question about Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni and kind of try to tie that in. So he was asked a question about Lamar. He said this: our number one objective here in Baltimore is to make Lamar Jackson the greatest player in the history of the position that the NFL's ever seen. That is our objective, is to make him the greatest player that's ever played the quarterback position. We think he has the capabilities, and we think he has all the intangibles on being the greatest quarterback in the history of the National Football League. At first, you would go, man, that's a lot of hyperbole for a guy that's 2-4 in the postseason. But then you think about it. What do you think John Harbaugh's doing there? He knew that playoff loss to Kansas City in the AFC Championship game was heart-wrenching to him. That's more of a mindset thing. John Harbaugh wants him to think, Hoss, reach for greatness. Just reach for greatness. We'll deal with the rest. Do you think he really thinks that he's going to win 7 Super Bowls and he's going to be the greatest player in the history of the National Football League at quarterback? Probably not. But you know what he does believe? That guy will take that mindset and those comments that he made about his quarterback. Lamar will take that and go, well, the organization and my head coach believe in me. And I think it's more of a mindset thing. I think it's coach's corner kind of stuff. The coach is telling the player, I'm with you in this. I think you have all these skills to be the greatest player in the history of the position. And I don't think John Harbaugh just throws that out. Now, do the Harbaughs go overboard? Yes. But I think that's how you have to coach players. Jimmy Johnson told me something a long time ago. If you tell a player who he is, he'll remain. If you tell a player what he can become, he'll become. That's why Coach Johnson constantly was motivating players. He was constantly trying to get the best out of you. That's what made him a great coach, was his ability to be able to psychologically motivate you. You may not be that guy, but he had you thinking that you were that guy. Now let's take that over to Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts at no time in his 3 years with Nick Sirianni has ever endorsed him. That's my coach. That's my guy. Hey, I love playing for the guy. I've really enjoyed playing for Nick Sirianni. Hey, he can't even answer a normal question about what his job title is. Does Jalen Hurts have to endorse Nick? Is it important? It just seems that all the great quarterback and head coaching relationships, they seemingly endorse one another. And they're all on the same page with each other. John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson are in it together, it seems. Andy Reid and Mahomes and Zach Taylor and Burrow and LaFleur and Love. Contract issues going on in Green Bay right now, part of the game. Is it important that Jalen Hurts has to endorse Nick Sirianni? Is it important that you have to have that and that endorsement? I think it is. I think it is because it tells everybody else in the locker room, whether you believe it or not, at least you're in the fight together. Okay? Pat Riley stuff. He was the best at managing million-dollar personalities. He sure was, Charlie. And I'll even give that to the guy in Chicago, too, Phil Jackson. I think Phil was great at that, too. Phil can't build a team to save his life, but you know what he can do? He can spin the saucers in the dishes, and he knew exactly what buttons to push. Pat Riley is one of the greatest coaches at motivating superstar players like Magic Johnson and Abdul-Jabbar. No doubt about it. You had to have a personality like Pat Riley. I mean, right? No need to endorse a guy that will be fired before the season ends. I think you have to endorse him more, senor. You don't want to go into a football season with any kind of notion that you're not on the same page, do you really? Would you like to go and do something with someone that you know in your heart you don't have any respect for, but some of the players are looking to you for leadership? Even if you're kind of bullshitting, don't you have to endorse the guy publicly? Or maybe behind the scenes you're not. Right? Another fraudulent season incoming for the Eagles. I hope not. Okay? I hope not. Jalen Hurts doesn't want to kiss ass to the coach that didn't take a bullet for Brian Johnson or Sean Desai. Weak-ass leadership, in my opinion. We're going to talk about Brian Johnson here in a second. How can Hurts and Nick be on the same page when he might get in the way? I think there's something to be said about this. Forte says it's a job. It's a different type of job, though. It's bound to happen, Sills. We still have Nick. True, I get it. Dan just making stuff up. What stuff up? What are you talking about? Making what up? I'm asking you, well, here, let's go into the conversation on what Brian Johnson is telling the coaches in Washington, D.C. Brian Johnson's now the assistant head football coach of the Washington Commanders, and he's also the passing coordinator, who's telling coaches in that building that Nick Sirianni called 95% of the plays last year. And every single time that Brian Johnson had a problem with the plays, that were being signaled into the huddle. Brian had a problem with some of them. Jalen had a problem with some of them. They tried to battle with Nick, but Nick would have none of it. Nick Sirianni called 95% of the plays last year. 95% of the plays. Okay? 95% of the plays he called. This wasn't Brian Johnson's play calling last year. It was Nick Sirianni's play calling. And this is why Jalen Hurts and Nick have a disconnect. It's because both those guys, Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni, had a problem. He's telling coaches in that building, and you want to know where I got that from? Doug Williams, who's still in that building. Doug Williams is saying that Brian Johnson is telling the coaches on the staff like Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn that Nick Sirianni called 95% of the plays last year. So when you fired Brian, you fired the wrong guy. And this is why Jalen and Nick have a disconnect. Diane Rossini came out publicly and said the problems of the team a year ago were more than just when they were 10-2. Those things were manifesting itself throughout the whole season, that when those guys were doing the play calling, Nick was constantly in the way. He called 95% of those plays last year. Can you imagine? So why'd you fire Brian Johnson? You fired Brian Johnson because you had to have somebody take the fall for Nick's failure. Brian Johnson was fired because of Nick's failures, not Brian Johnson's failures. It's no brainer, Sills. Nick said it's his offense, and now I see Kellen Moore improving. I don't know that yet. We have to wait and see September. Everything, okay, we have to. Wait and see. You don't know that in pajamas if the offense is improved. That's why Hurts said 95% of the offense changed. Makes sense now. It totally, hey, Marshall, absolutely true. You, right there, babe, absolutely true. Now you know why Jalen's doing this, because Nick has no influence in it. Can you imagine? So Brian Johnson is in Washington, D.C. right now telling people that guy sabotaged the season last year. Then every time we had play calling that were going to be conducive to how Jalen was going to play, he came in and called something different than what Jalen and Brian Johnson wanted. Brian Johnson wasn't the problem last year for the offense. Nick Sirianni was. Why is that not going to be a dynamic this year? And get this. I heard the guys on Birds 365 saying this. Well, if he didn't hire Kellen and he didn't hire Vic, what's his job? Talking to the media? Because that's the only job that I can see, and he's horrible at that. What exactly is going on here? I don't understand this. You got a coordinating passer coach in Washington publicly now saying, hey, Nick called those plays last year. It wasn't me. Every time we tried to make a play call, Jalen and I were on the same page. Nick wasn't. I said that Nick kept mentioning my offense throughout this whole season, and he didn't know how to adjust to anything. And that's why they caught him in the back end of the season. Prince, you're dead on. That's why they caught him in the back end of that season. Daniel, Big Sills, happy football Monday, brother. Truth, justice, in the Big Sills way. God bless America. No question about it. You're watching the game last year. I didn't see Nick with a play sheet in front of him or him talking in the mic much. I did. I saw him with papers in his hand last year. Dude, you got Brian Johnson Diane Rossini came out and said there was a conflict last year. She's a pretty reputable person on covering this league. And she came out and said this stuff was manifesting all year long, that they were butting heads, Jalen and Nick. Diane Rossini said this. I didn't say this. Said that she even said he was calling in the majority of the plays. Now, did Jalen Hurts go in the offseason with his agent and say that we don't want Nick involved in the offense? Maybe. I don't know that. I don't know that. True story. Welcome to Philly. I've been a Philly fan since Dick Allen and Richie Allen. Been around. Brian Johnson spoke facts. James Jones. I completely believe Brian Johnson. Do you think Lurie told Nick to let the coordinators call plays or else he's gone? I do, Martin. Martin, not in those kind of words, because I really do think Jeffrey Lurie likes Nick Sirianni. I think Xander, you said this. I think Nick is more of a Jeffrey Lurie guy than a Howie guy. Because I don't think Howie wants to get tied into any coach where he likes him too much. Because he may have to blow him out. Okay? He may have to fire him. He never had a chance. Messed up for Johnson. It was picking. Brian Johnson never had a chance to become a really good coordinator, because what they did was they had babysitters. They got Patricia for Desai, and Nick was the babysitter for Brian Johnson. You had two coordinators on both sides of the ball. You had Matt Patricia last year for Desai, and you had Nick for Brian Johnson. You had too many roosters in the hen house. It's totally the issue, man. Thank you, Marshall. I appreciate it, brother. I'm going to continue to pound the table. Nick has to go and will go. They couldn't do it this year because it would have made Howie and Jeff look bad. Nick is gone. Hey, I agree with Xander. They have a season where they put up 11 wins, 12 wins. They get to an NFC title and get beat, and the quarterback looks a little better. They're not firing him. 4 straight years, he'll get an opportunity to coach somewhere else. Maybe Nick Sirianni's a better coach somewhere else without having all the strings attached to it. I don't know. First year, Nick, if you watched the games Nick called, you'll notice the same scheme they ran last year. Prince, amen. They were 2-5 in that process too. They were 2-5. And that's why, hey, Prince, that's why I say this to you. You know, when Nick is in charge of the offense, if you think about it, he's 13-11. With that talent on the team, when he's calling plays for the Eagles are 2 games above 500. When other people are calling the game plan, like Shane Steichen, the football team is winning. What's the common denominator here is Nick. So my question is, how are they going to overcome that going into the season? Is Jalen just going to ignore Nick? How can you do that? Especially when he's an offensive guy and he was hired to be that guy. I think he got a dilemma. Now, do I think Nick's smart enough to step away and step back? I do. John McMullen did a really good piece, I think it was 2 weeks ago, in the political angle and the political angling of Nick Sirianni in this process. He's pretty smart. He's not going to let his ego get him fired. Where Doug got his ego got himself fired. You understand that that's the difference between Nick and Doug. Outside of the Super Bowl win and the Super Bowl loss. Doug's ego got him fired. Nick's lack of ego in that situation kept his job for him. Okay? 20 minutes in and it's raining? No. This goes into preparing for the upcoming season when you have pretty much the same dynamic working here, or maybe you don't. It's something to keep an eye on. It's not raining. You won 11 games having all those bumps and bruises a year ago. See, once again, 11-17 doesn't get it. You're right here. And when you're right here, the littlest things can take you off the train and take you off the rails to you not winning a Super Bowl. He doesn't get it. Everything has to go perfect this year for the Chiefs to be a three-peat. Why wouldn't every fucking thing have to be perfect for the Eagles, for them to get back to the Super Bowl? You make it sound like you can overcome shit. They couldn't. No NFL team really can overcome bad situations in your own locker room. You have to fix them. You have to overcome them. You have to change things out. Hey, what are the number one things? You want to hear something that Howie Roseman did that's pretty remarkable? Because he thought that Carson Wentz was such a cancer in the Eagle locker room, you know what he did? He paid $38 million to get rid of that guy off his football team and out of his locker room. $38 million went to the cap. It was dead cap money that year when they sent his ass to Indianapolis. $38 million or $34 million, whatever it was, to send that guy's ass away. That's how bad the locker room, according to Howie, was. Hey, was it the right thing to do? Absolutely. They got a 1 out of it, and I think they even got a 3 out of it. It was a good thing, yes. He did. That's right, Lamar. But it was worth it to him. Okay? It was worth it to him to fix that dynamic in the locker room. Hey, I'm going to eat this $34 million. I mean, Howie was the first to do it because then the following year, Matt Ryan had a $38 million cap hit against the Atlanta Falcons, and they ate that shit. And they sent his ass also to Indy after Wentz. Okay? I mean, Twisco still be gossiping and acting like he knows. Dude, you don't have to be you don't have to be inside the organization to watch their actions. What are you talking about? Knowing how the organization operates? All you have to do is watch and listen. It's not that hard, Twiz. All you have to do is have a little bit of an attention span, and you'll be able to follow along too. I mean, it's not that hard. Brian Johnson said that Sirianni was calling 95% of the plays a year ago. He's telling the media in D.C., and he's telling coaches on that staff like Kingsbury. And their Nick still sits. You fired the wrong guy. Diane Rossini 2 days ago was reporting that there's a disconnect between the head coach and the player, Jalen Hurts. And you're starting training camp. Hey, maybe that's fixed. Doesn't seem it, though. That's why I asked you. You think Jalen Hurts has to endorse Nick? Do you think he ever will? I've never heard him say one positive thing about Nick Sirianni in his entire time as a Philadelphia Eagle. I've never heard him say one word positive. Have you? Have you ever heard one word where he said, Nick's a great coach? What a great leader. Anything. Slaps his hand down on the sidelines. I mean, have you ever heard him endorse? I heard John Harbaugh go overboard with Lamar today. Completely overboard with Lamar. Jalen just has a job to do. You wait a minute. Hey, big picking. When you're the face of a franchise, it's more than just showing up to work and punching your time card. When you're the face of the franchise, I mean, you do. LJ's a liar. Brady constantly during his time said that Bill Belichick prepared him better than any coach could ever have prepared him. A complete bull-faced lie. Okay? Complete bull-faced lie. Completely. And even after the fact, when he didn't have to. Brady constantly threw praise at Belichick being the guy that prepared him and developed him into being the player that he was. even while he was playing in New England. Bull-faced lie. Nobody prepared him but Belichick. Okay? The play caller was Josh McDaniel or Bill O'Brien. But the guy who prepared him on what he was going to see on pre-snap reads was Belichick. Absolutely. Yeah, praise them. Okay, dude. We'll agree to disagree. Okay? He's the guy playing war games with him. This is what they're going to do on 3rd and 10, plus 20. This is what they're going to do on 2nd and 8. This is what they're going to do. Show me what you're going to do with a blitz. We're going to bring a man blitz. We're going to bring someone off the seam. What are you going to do, Tom? Well, we're going to punt. How many times did you see Belichick at the end of practice on a Thursday telling his guys, remember something, guys, 3rd and 7, remember something on onside kicks. They had rules. You couldn't reach out with one hand near the end zone at any time. That's why you never saw fumbles in the red zone with the Patriots. They practiced all these things. There was one guy who did that. That was Belichick going over the little things. It's why you never saw the Patriots losing games because of the little things. They practiced them. They harped on them. And the organization, but by the way, once again, Brady had nobody on those teams. So everybody feared for their jobs. There were no superstars like the Eagles have. No superstars, but Gronkowski on offense and Tom Brady. That's it. Angelo Cataldi at 3:30 will join us. Jalen takes care of business on the field. End of story. Well, we'll see. Okay, we will. It's crazy how y'all mad because he wasn't kissing Nick's ass. Maybe he knew more about Nick. Did you ever think of that? Hey, Spa, after all the coordinators that he has been through, Steve Sarkisian and some of the coaches that he had, like Lane Kiffin down at, you think Lane Kiffin knew more about offense than Nick Sirianni? I do. I think Lane Kiffin is a great play caller. I think Steve Sarkisian's a great play caller. I think Bill O'Brien's a pretty good play caller. He's not a manager, and that's what undid him in Houston, was that he started making decisions with all that BS when it came to personnel decisions like the Andre Hopkins move. Okay, but at the end of the day here, okay, I mean, okay, I swear you make you BS in your head and try to spoon feed these TikTok brains. Hey, Twiz, you believe that's a you thing, dude? Why would I, Twiz, why in the world would I spend 4 hours sitting on here fucking lying to somebody I don't talk to actually, but types? You ever think of that? Why in the world would I lie to you? I have no reason to make shit up. You've seen the people that come on this program. All I have to do is call Cliff. All I have to do is call Doug. And the majority of these people have been on the program. I could call Tony Dungy at any time. I asked Bruce Arians, who's been on 5 times, above Devin White. And he told you. Why in the world would I really sit here and spend 4 hours lying to you? Why? What is the point? I mean, I don't lie to anybody. You know why? I haven't met a lot of people that I want to lie to. I'm just not good at it. I'm just not good at it. New England didn't win by deflating footballs and stealing signals from opponents. No shit. They won because of great coaching and great preparation and great recruiting of players and situational players. Hey, you know the difference between the Patriot dynasty and the Philadelphia Eagle roster? They signed the right players. You signed big name players. Same thing with Kansas City or with San Francisco. You got big name players, both rosters. You got nothing to show for it. You got nothing to show for it. Kansas City and New England, you guys are like this. Oh, wait a minute. They got Brady and Mahomes. Yeah, nobody was sold on Mahomes. Obviously, nobody was sold on Brady. Those organizations made the right personnel moves, and they developed their quarterbacks. You haven't developed a quarterback in 25 years. Who are you talking about? You know how many quarterbacks Belichick has developed in the last 24 years? You want to hear something? Look at it. There was a time frame 3 years ago. Jacoby Brissett was starting. Jimmy Garoppolo was starting. Brady was starting. Mac Jones was starting. Let's see who else. You had 4 quarterbacks that he drafted, not one of them in the first round but Mac Jones. They were all starting on NFL teams. You want to know what a quarterback factory is? This guy finds Matt Castle in the 7th round. Never started a down at USC. And he goes on and wins 11 games when Brady hurt his knee. Then he goes to Kansas City and wins a division title. That's called developing a player. It wasn't just Brady he did. Jimmy Garoppolo got a $28 million deal and took a team to the Super Bowl. Where did he get that knowledge from and that start? He got that in New England under Belichick. Where'd you think he got that shit from? Okay? Hey, by the way, I'm not even talking about the GOAT. I'm talking about marginal players who are still in this league that he drafted. You don't have one quarterback outside of Carson Wentz who has been floated. You got one first rounder that's now a journeyman, and you got another guy who has to have a big year to save face. And this guy's drafted guys in later rounds, and they're starting in places. Remarkable. That's how you develop the quarterback position. You say whatever you want about him having Tom Brady. What about the other guys he won with? Look, guys like Chris Hogan were catching footballs and not having to worry about busts like Jalen Reagor in New England. Here are facts. Our defense performed poorly. And the offense, despite its talent, struggled throughout the season. The play calling in critical situations was too basic. It was Nick. That's what Brian's saying. Okay? That's what Nick is. That's what Brian Johnson's saying. Every time we had a game plan, Nick would shred the game plan and interfere in the game plan and call a different play in situations throughout the year last year. And this is why the quarterback and him, I hope that's resolved. But guess what you know what the Eagles and how they decided to solve that was? You know what they did? They decided to set and send each guy to separate corners. Nick, you're not going to have anything to do with the offense. And you're going to be kind of like an overseer. Quite frankly, he's not. He didn't hire these guys. You know, it would have made more sense like a John Harbaugh or a Mike Tomlin if Nick actually had any of hiring of these guys, but he didn't. This is why this dynamic going into training camp is going to be interesting to watch. Listen, do I think they could have resolved this for the best and for the betterment of the team? Yes, I do. I think they could have all worked at it, had it come to, hey, could it be possible? Now, I'm guessing here. Could it be that Jalen and him had a heart-to-heart conversation? Hey, look, I'm going to step back. You and Kellen are going to run the offense this year. I want you to. The offense has to be yours anyway. So I'm going to sit back and watch. Could it be? Nick is smart enough to do that. I think he's smart enough to do that. Seals, this year will be an awakening for the Eagles team if Nick gets involved. Hey, Pete, but I think Nick's smart. I think he knows that if he gets in the way this year like he did a year ago, I think he knows he's immediately fired. Because at the end of the day, he can always turn around and look at the ownership and go, well, this is kind of what they wanted. This is what they wanted. This is the dynamic that they wanted. Right? This is the dynamic that they truly wanted. By the way, I'm talking about as you show up to camp tomorrow. Has that dynamic been resolved? That's one of the things to keep an eye on, okay? That's all I'm saying here, is to keep an eye on that. We're going to ask Angelo Cataldi that. As soon as Nick handed the keys to Shane, the Eagles started winning. They were 8th overall in 23 on offense, running Nick's offense. That was because of talent. That was because of play calling talent. And because, remember something too, Forrest, that offense is not a play caller's offense. That offense is more situationally based on the decision-making of the quarterback when you run the read option. When you run a read option offense, that's not play calling, because the quarterback has to make a read option decision on the fly. It's not a predetermined play call that you have to know pre-snap definitions and identities and where to throw the ball. You have not. Shane took all of Jalen. You know what's really smart about Shane Steichen? He took all of Jalen Hurts's he took all of his deficiencies away from him. And he accentuated all the great things he did. His decision-making with the read option. I'll tell you this, Jalen Hurts is one of the best read option quarterbacks I've ever seen. And then when you put on top of that, he's above average for a read option quarterback on throwing the ball. That's what made him dynamic. Shane knew that. Shane knew that. That's why he went to Nick. Nick, we've got to create an offense here. What was wrong with Nick Sirianni's offense last year? That offense was based on Phillip Rivers. That looked like Phillip Rivers' offense in San Diego. That was Phillip Rivers' offense. I saw it. I covered the team for 5 years. When Nick was the wide receiver coach and Frank was the OC with Mike McCoy. That was an offense set up for Phillip Rivers, not Jalen Hurts. Jason says too much throwing. Absolutely. Not enough in-game RPO and read option stuff that accentuates the quarterback's skill set. Hey, why are passes more wide open in 2022 than they were in 23? Because people had to stay at home. Jalen didn't have to be exceptionally accurate in 22. You know why? They feared his legs. And those passing routes had more space for the receivers to get open. That's what made those routes and him look. Get this, he threw for more yards and had more touchdowns. Had more completions last year. But did he look like 22 with lesser passing attempts, lesser completions, lesser touchdowns? No, he looked better. Why? Because they were more effective, because the routes were better. Because Jalen's decision-making was great. Jalen Hurts can't have someone tell him to have a pre-snap read because he can't do it. But Jalen Hurts can do this on the fly on a read option play. He'll make your quarterbacks look like you're stuck in cement, just like he did Fred Warner. He made Fred Warner look like he had 2 left feet, or Mozzie Smith. Okay? He was just great. And dude, I thought he got better as the season went too in passing. In 23, I thought he got worse as the year went on. I did. Nick needs to study Kellen Moore's play calling in various situations. This could be a learning year for him. Prince, I think it's going to be a learning year. I totally think it's going to be a learning year. It's completely. Could you imagine if Doug was still our head coach and Shane was our OC? Talk about a dynamic in making for Hurts. Hey, I'll say this, Devontae. The one thing you have to look at, though, when you have success like that, Shane Steichen was earmarked to be a head football coach. And I can't wait to watch Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. By the way, they got a really good offensive line. I think they've done some nice things in the draft. You know, they get Jonathan Taylor back healthy. I think Indianapolis is going to be an interesting ball team. If that quarterback can give them a Jalen Hurts 2022 season, Indianapolis is going to be a Final Four team because they got the personnel to do it, especially on defense. Their front seven's pretty decent. Getting home and one of their corners is probably an issue. You know, they put a guy on the other side of Michael Pittman. They got a good old line. Their young right tackles coming around. They're going to be a pretty good football team. Okay? Eagles offense should be no worse than 5th overall. Talent is there, and the real play caller is there. Kellen is good. Hey, Forrest, I don't care about where they're ranked. I care to win games. Okay? See, what was the cool thing about the way that New England went about their business and how they won football games? What up, Maniac? You know what was great about them? One week Brady would throw for 128 yards. The next week he'd throw for 428 yards. And it was every week was a different chameleon. Every week was different. And whatever and however it rolled out at the end of the year, if Brady had 5,000 yards or 4,000 yards, it didn't really matter to him. It only mattered that game, we need more of me in this versus let's jam this square peg in a round hole. Some coordinators want to put up big numbers and big scores. Some coordinators want to win ball games. There is a difference. They weren't trying to put statistics up in New England because they never paid you on them. They were trying to put wins up in New England. And if you thought you were going to get paid on your numbers in New England, they moved you. Randy Moss had 2 great years up there, I think it was. Then they moved him. They're not going to pay you like that up there. Especially when you have Brady, like Kansas City. It's not paying Snead, not paying Tyreek Hill. They're not paying those guys because they don't have to. They have a quarterback who can throw them out of trouble. That's the key. Hey, can Mahomes be beat? I think he can. Got to have the play caller, an effective quarterback, a good old line, halfway decent defense. And I think you have to have a really good coordinator on defense. Okay, I do. Still, speaking of Shane, he made Gardner Minshew a Pro Bowler with his offense. Gardner struggled under Nick's scheme. That's really a great take, too, because, like you said, after what's-his-name went down, Anthony Richardson, this guy was in the Pro Bowl with Jalen Hurts last year. Can you imagine Gardner Minshew, a guy that the Eagles just said, go ahead, walk out the building, and he did, was a Pro Bowl quarterback. And not that the Eagles should have kept him. I'm not saying that. But he turned a guy who was a streetwalker, who Jacksonville didn't want, and the Eagles didn't want. He turned him into a Pro Bowler. That's kind of remarkable. Don't you think? I mean, that's why he's on the Raiders. Gardner did all right against the Cowboys in 22, but the Saints game, he's terrible in that game. But if you remember, Farce, they ran the RPO offense with Gardner Minshew in that game against the Saints. And that had to be a little bit, maybe a nick, because they never ran a read option offense in Indy with Gardner Minshew. When Gardner Minshew got the starting gig after Anthony Richardson got hurt, they went more to a pro-style drop-back quarterback stuff. Shane's a smart guy, man. He is a smart guy. He knows what he's doing with quarterbacks. He looks at that guy's weaknesses and coaches it from the weakness, not from the strength. This is what he can't do. So we're not doing it. This is what he doesn't do well. So we're going to effectively try to coach around that. He coaches around the players' inabilities versus trying to look at what they do. See, how many times have you guys come on here and you say, well, I think Kellen Moore is going to get the best out of him. I want Kellen Moore to get away from the worst things that Hurts does to create those turnovers. That's what I want him to do. Let Jalen be Jalen. Let him eat. So I want an offensive coordinator that's going to go, move him around in the pocket. Don't have him sitting back there like that. Have him rolling around. Roll him right. Roll him left. Roll him to his strength side. Roll him to his favorite side. Do something different. Use some motion. Okay. Put him under center. Fair enough. Do some things to help him overcome his inabilities. We're gonna talk about some of the things that I want to see fixed as you come out of training camp, getting ready for September 6th in Brazil. Okay? Eagles should have gone after Tyler Huntley. I love Tyler Huntley. I think Tyler Huntley is a ball player, and I think he could be a starter in this league anywhere. I really enjoy watching him play. Okay? Roll right out of the playoffs. Well, tell you what, sitting back there in the pocket and patting that ball and that blitz getting to him is going to knock your ass right out of the playoffs. Okay, Sills, you just dropped the jewel. That's the disconnect. Nick want to look good winning. They got away from what they made them great. Maybe that's why Hurts looks so frustrated. Right. That's exactly what, hey, they were 8th last year in offense. And everybody came away with that going, man, did that look like the 22 offense? And get this, it was lesser. And everyone had career years. You had more guys with career years in 23, and it looked worse than 22. Why? Because you weren't putting teams away. You weren't jumping out to those giant leads. You weren't inflicting your will. You kept everybody in the ball game. It's like a heavyweight fighter not throwing his right hand and just going in there and being a jabber. Why would I throw the jab when I have one of the greatest knockout punches of all time? George Foreman, who came on this program, will tell you, I'm not looking to win rounds. I'm looking to win the fight. I'm not in here trying to win round 1, 2, or 3. That's not what I'm doing. I'm trying to win the fight. I'm going to catch you somewhere in the ring. 4th round, 7th round, 10th round, like Michael Mora. I'm going to catch your ass. And he does, and he did. That's how you knock teams out in the league. I'm not trying to win the first quarter. I'm not trying to win the second quarter. I'm trying to win the game. Okay, I'm trying to win the ball game here. Defense was a joke. Couldn't tackle for shit. Okay. Well, blame Howie. Blame Howie on that. You hired a shitty coordinator and you hired shitty personnel. What else is there to be said? 2 things happened at once. You got no pass rush. You couldn't tackle. You addressed no issues. By the way, you want to hear something crazy? Xander brings this up all the time. Do you know who one of the top 3 linebackers is right now that's favored to win the All-Pro selection preseason? Is TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards is one of the top 3 players predicted to make the first-team All-Pro team. And what's crazy is you didn't have to draft him. You DFA'd him, and you developed him, and you said, no, I think the Kobe Dean's better. All you need to know about Howie and how he looks at the linebacker position is that decision. Why in the world would you think that Nakobe Dean would ever be the player Edwards is? When you know he'll never fulfill that. He'll never be the player, TJ. He may never be the player Kaiser White was. But you made that decision. Why? Because you drafted him in the 3rd round. That's not a reason to keep a guy on the team. That's not a reason to start him. That's not even a reason to play him. Well, what? Well, wait, Dan. When you draft guys that high, you got to play them. No, I don't. If I'm a coach and I got say on my team, I'm not playing a shittier player over another guy. But you're being a little unfair, Dan, because Dean gets hurt. He's a little undersized. Don't you think you should give him a shot? I think he has to earn his shot. I think he has to earn it. I don't think you're given anything. You have to earn playing time. You don't get it because you were drafted in the third. That's the ass backwards mentality of the Eagles right there. That's flawed. Well, Jordan Davis is going to get the first looks over Milton Williams. Why? He's the 13th pick. Is he more talented? Is Jordan Davis with more skill than Milton Williams? Yeah. How come Milton Williams is more productive? How come he's more productive? Because he actually lives up to his ability and skill set. He doesn't. He's more reliable, that means. And he's a lesser talent. You play that guy. I can rely on him. He's going to be there 17 weeks, and he's going to be productive. And he's durable, and he's not out of shape. And I like him. And he's versatile and willing to play in multiple positions for me. Nose, 3 technique, 1 technique, 5 technique. That's why Milton Williams is a commodity that the Eagles have. I said this to you. One of the coolest things about a guy, here's a guy that's never really started any kind of football in Philly, and he's a 3rd-round pick. That guy's not lost his value. You could easily get a 3rd-round pick, if not a 2nd for him. Pro Football Focus has him graded as one of the top defensive tackles for his amount of playing time that he had in the last 2 years. He's a good football player. Is he an elite guy? No. Is Hardgrave better? Probably. But Milton is a pretty good ball player. He's going to play a long time in this league. That's a 10-year plus guy. Is he going to be a frontline superstar player? Probably not. But there's going to be a lot of defensive coordinators that like him. I like him. You know why? He's reliable. He's durable. He's productive. He checks all the boxes. He's a 500-pound bencher. He works at his game. He works at his craft. I like him. I think of all the defensive tackles on your football team, that he gets the most out of his ability other than any other guy you have interior, than any player, including Jalen Carter. That guy gets the most out of what he has. Is he better than Carter? I'm not saying that. Has Carter got more talent? Yes. But that guy gets the most out of what he does. Jordan Davis is not. And I'm sick and tired of sitting here going into year 3, begging you to be in shape and begging you to live up to your ability. This is pro football. You're not on scholarship. It's time. You're either going to be this or you're not going to be this. And you're going to be defined by this. I'm not keeping you on my football team and giving you a contract extension and looking at you going, well, you've had a B career. That's kind of good. That's not good enough. The expectations for that player were high. And he's underachieved. Is he bad? No. No. Let's just take a look at this. Right now, you're in a position going into this camp where you're at a crossroads with Dean, who you took in the 3rd. Davis, will he live up to his potential? You don't know what Smith is. And you're going into camp. I heard Jeff Kerr say something about Nolan Smith playing well in the Buck game. That game was out of reach. That was garbage time. The Bucks had dismantled the Eagles mentally and physically. You went out there and played in a game, and you may have made some plays in a game that was so far out of reach. The Eagles were beat when they got off the bus. That's not a fair sample for Nolan Smith. In a game that the entire team quit getting off the bus. Give me a break. Give me a break. That game personified how the season ended. That's why when you go into this training camp, Eagles better have an attitude, because last year people are doubting you. Darius Slay, you're old. Well, we'll see. Okay. Jacoby, you suck. We'll see. Great. I want all that. Hey, Jalen, second year, we need to see him. You kind of go to the next. Don't worry, I got it. Okay. By the way, things I want to see coming out of training camp. Let's do that. Areas of weakness that the Eagles need to work on during training camp that teams are going to attack. I talked to a couple offensive coordinators. I talked to Mike Martz over the weekend, the former Rams OC and head coach, former Bears offensive coordinator. And I love talking to Mike. I said, Mike, when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, and I gave him some of the deficiencies on the team, this is what Mike said on how he would attack Philly. Mike's a Super Bowl ring. And he came up with, here, the areas of the Eagles that concern and that teams will challenge early in the year. This is what Martz said. He goes, one thing that I'd be if I was the offensive coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles right now, they need to be working on blitz pickups. I mean, how often are you going to keep Saquon Barkley in for max protection? Are you going to send him out wide? Or are you going to keep him in for max protection to help protect Cam Jurgens? He said, keep an eye on Barkley being in the first 6 games of the year. He'll be in there for max protection on third down and will not be a major part of the passing game whatsoever. He'll be more, well, that's not fair because pass protection is important and picking up blitzes. So they're going to use 2 guys to handle that blitzing. They're going to use Barkley and they're going to use Jurgens. So early in the season, until teams are sold that they're not going to get home and that Hurts is going to be able to beat the blitz, they're going to blitz you right away. So for me, I think max protection is going to be critical. And I'm not talking about perimeter blitzing. I'm talking about interior blitzing. You're going to be threatened right away up the middle. Green Bay is going to come after Jalen Hurts right away. That's going to be a first thing. They're going to see if he can pick that up. And they're going to see if Jurgens can pick that up. I've told you this before. One of the areas that Bill Belichick used to look at a football team when it came to the 11 players that he was going to attack on both sides of the ball, he always looked for first-year players, free agents, and he also looked for guys that you made trades for. Because he said the majority of the time, 95% of the time, those guys are still getting they're still getting antiquated into the defense or offense, and they're still learning their techniques. John Lynch said the same thing. When he went from the Bucs to the Denver Broncos, he said the best football I played was not the first year. It was the second year because I kind of understood what they were asking me to do. So the lack of knowledge they go after, no matter how talented you are, has nothing to do with talent, has nothing to do at that level. Everybody's good. It's got to do with knowledge. What players on the football team have the less amount of knowledge for me to attack with my offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator? Offensive left tackle. He's a rookie. I'm going to bring a lot of blitzes on him. Let's see if he can pick it up. Let's see if he understands pass probe. Let's see if he understands twits and diamonds. Let's see if he knows all that. You're going to stress the knowledge. Why do you think in OTAs or minicamps, what's the one thing that they do to the rookies? They oversaturate them with intel. They want to see how much you retain. Because the knowledge of the game at this level, that's the key that makes you a champion. It's not about your ability. Hey, the Eagles have some of the greatest talented players on the planet. What's it to you if you can't get it across the finish line? Great. You have a bunch of really good seasons, and you don't win shit. And look, I think the NFC Championship's a big deal. I think winning the NFC Championship is a big deal. Is it the end all? Of course not. But I think that's a big deal. Very few teams get that far. Dan Marino got there twice, 1-1. Morton Moon, I think, got to a couple conference games, never won any. Jim Kelly got to 4 Super Bowls, didn't win any. Those conference championships are a thing. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I think it's a big deal. You know, I talk about silver medals and shit. Still, that's a good accomplishment. No, it's not the end all. Okay? Okay? Damn, Sills. I had to search to find your live stream. 5-star. Sorry to hear that. Shit, all you got to do is just type in National Football Show and pops right up. I think Houston comes out of the AFC. Could. Depending on what they're going to do on defense and on that side of the ball. We can have a faster NASCAR, but if the driver isn't good, you're not going to win. Hey, Jason, I don't think you have to be Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady to win a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco won one. I don't think you have to be those men. I really don't. I think, hey, it's a luxury having those guys. But I don't think – can Jalen Hurts win a Super Bowl? Yeah. Can Brock Purdy? Yeah. Can Jared Goff? Yeah. Can Joe Burrow? For sure. Can Allen? Yeah. All these guys can win. You're making that money because your team believes you can win a Super Bowl, not because you're better than Patrick Mahomes. Flacco did not win 2. Joe Flacco won once. Well, no, he didn't. He won 1. He was a starting quarterback. The other quarterback was Trent Dilfer when the Baltimore Ravens won. Okay? He was the quarterback. Flacco won 1. Flacco was the MVP, I believe, in that game, though. I think he was. Jordan Love cooked that defense when he came in for Rodgers. Jordan Love is a good-looking football player, and I think Matt LaFleur is doing a nice job with him. Okay, I really do. Watson in Cleveland, I don't know yet. I think, hey, Eagle fan, I think Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, I think this is a year for him. Hey, get this. Jalen's got to prove he's the guy from 22. Deshaun Watson has to prove the guy he was to get that $230 million contract. Because if he can't prove it this year that he's that guy, it could go down as one of the greatest and worst deals in pro football history. That could go down as one of the worst deals of all time if that guy doesn't deliver winning football to them. I think when he was in Houston, young Deshaun Watson, not that he's old now, he was electric, but he's got to show he can be that guy. Some of the things that the Eagles have to work on. By the way, Angelo Cataldi will be with us at 3:30 Eastern time. Oh, and Xander, Gary Cobb will be with us at 4:30. So we'll have Gary Cobb at 4:30. Maybe we could drop Xander in at 4 before Gary Cobb. We'll see. Dan Sileo, my Pittsburgh friends are telling me the Eagles are close to closing in on a deal for the TT. Thanks for reminding me that. Let me ask you this. Let's go here with this. Okay. I won't. No, I only keep him on for 30 though, Xander. Would you guys be interested in Cam Hayward? Wow. And by the way, it's true. You know why? I talked to Carl Dunbar. Here, Big Sills is reporting this. It's true. The agent for Cameron Hayward has been notified that they're taking calls to potentially moving Cameron Hayward, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Eagles have shown interest. And how I know this, my former teammate, Carl Dunbar. Let me show you a great picture of him and me, who's a defensive line coach for the Steelers. I had a conversation with him, and not to give too much away. I don't want to bury anybody here, but it's true. No, it's just not the Eagles too. Would this be somebody like an Adama Sue kind of deal? Potentially, where you bring in a guy like him. I think Cameron Hayward is close to being a Pro Football Hall of Famer. Sileo and Dunbar. Dunbar is the current defensive line coach. By the way, I think he was down there with you, Xander. I think he was down there with you when he was there at Alabama. I think he was a D-line coach. Here's Big Sills and Carl right there, number 78, playing together. This is in Frankfurt, Germany. We are in Frankfurt, Germany. And here is the D-line coach of the Steelers and me, Carl Dunbar. Played at LSU. Great guy. Great guy. And he said, yeah, but we're going into training camp thinking Cameron's going to be here. Would you be interested in having a guy like that? Yes, and we still need another defensive end as well, Sills. Spin bad, I agree. Okay? He doesn't have massage. Thanks, Mike. Okay? The steaks in Germany are top tier. Yeah, they're really good food there, especially in Vienna, Austria. Sills, I went and looked at some of your old tapes from the U. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Spa. Appreciate that. Yeah, we had a good time down there. We did some good things. Twiskas for what, Sills? Fifth rounder? I'd give a fifth rounder up for Cameron Hayward. I'd give a fifth rounder up for him. Wow, can you imagine having Cameron Hayward, Jalen Carter, and Jordan Davis and Milton Williams as your interior tackles? Shit. That would be insane great. Cameron Hayward wants to play in Philly. You know why? Right down the pike. He doesn't have to move his kids out of school. He doesn't have, dude, I don't think he's going anywhere but either the Giants or the Eagles. They probably want to get him out of they're not going to trade him to the Jets. They're not going to trade him to the Patriots because why would they send a guy like that to a shithole? And I'm talking about a team that's not very good. You're trying to get him an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. Cameron Hayward could get an opportunity to win a Super Bowl in Philly. He ain't going to win one in New York. Maybe Washington would be something. They're going to try to get him out of the AFC, but they're not going to send him to another AFC team. I don't think. The asking price is a second-round pick and a late-round pick. But that would be more than what Brian Burns got. Prince, that's way over the top. Brian Burns got a 2 and a 5. And he's 25, 26 years old. I'm not doing that for a guy who's 32. A 2? A second rounder and a fifth? The same asking price for Brian Burns? No way. That's way over the top. The Steelers are insane to think that. He's a good player. That's the asking price, Sills, and he's 35. Absolutely not. I'm not doing that. A 2 and a 5? Again, like I said, Brian Burns got that. That's what the Giants had to surrender to Carolina. No way. No way. Here's the second thing I want them to work on in training camp. And this needs to be identified during training camp. And hopefully it'll be resolved by the time September comes. You know, you're going to have to be able to come up with ways for Jalen Hurts to utilize the middle of the field. You have to get Dallas Goedert going. He's got to be the focal point on getting going because it will open up the numbers more. You can't exclude the middle of the field like you did last year. You've got to have a presence, and the play caller and the quarterback have to feel comfortable throwing across the middle of the field. They've got to. Sills, the blitz pickup also depends on the offense you choose to run against it. Now that we know Nick was running the offense, could you say that the scheme, the problem? Yes. In 2022, they were great against, Prince. Yes. Scheme and schematics have a lot to do, motion and all that. Absolutely. Nick's interference last year derailed Jalen Hurts' development, and they kept him, which is insane. Dan, you think we could use Sue? Hey, yeah. I hear he's working out still. He's not going to go to training camp. He is not. Dominic Sue doesn't need training camp, and I don't want him in training camp. You don't need a guy like Sue in training camp. I have no problem asking him to come back and play the run. You're not asking him to come back and be Dominic Sue. You're asking Dominic Sue is maybe a little bit better than Fletcher Cox. Here's the difference. He still wants to play. I think him and Fletcher, look, if you said, Sills, I'm taking Fletcher, I'd be okay taking Sue in his career. Sills, I'm taking Fletcher. You take Fletcher, I'll take Sue. I'd be okay with that too. I think those two guys were very dominant football players. They were very dominant players. And personally, I think maybe Fletcher in the end still had more to give than what Adama could Sue, because I think some of the injuries eventually have kind of caught up on him. And Sue became more of a mercenary, going from team to team. He didn't want to go to training camp anymore. He was never loyal to any organization. See, Fletcher's loyal to the Eagles. Sue was never loyal to anybody, including the Lions. He was about making the most money, and it was about going to places that gave him the best opportunity for his resume. There's nothing wrong with that. Darrelle Revis had a career of that. He was just never loyal, though. Very seldom do you have the Brandon Grahams of the world or the Fletcher Coxes or the Jason Kelce's that are loyal to an organization. Because most of the time, 95% of the time, the organizations aren't loyal to you. You know, pay me and I'll play. That's it. That's our relationship. You don't have to like me. You don't have to what have you. I don't care. I'm bringing a service to you. You're paying me for it. Let's move on. That's the business aspect of it. And Sue plays it like that. Yeah, Hurts. D Hurts. I'm okay with that too. Not everybody's Brandon Graham that has an affection for the community. That stuff's rare. And it's old school. You're going to see very little of that moving forward when some of these players. I mean, look, you think Stephon Diggs has any loyalty to the Minnesota Vikings? He's two teams removed, Vikings and the Bills now. Now he's in Houston. You think Tyreek Hill has any loyalty to Kansas City? Now, Shady McCoy has loyalty to the Eagles. Why? His unceremonious moving to Buffalo under Chip Kelly kind of derailed that whole thing because he looks at himself as an Eagle. And the Eagles like it too, and like him. Linville Joseph, I'd rather have Sue. You know, Linville was very good too, though. I shouldn't say that. If we get Cam, Fletcher will come back. Wow. Fletcher Cox and Cameron Hayward on your football team with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter would be stupid sick. The amount of knowledge, the amount of football excellence, shit, I'd want to go listen. It'd be like a classroom at Villanova. Just sitting there listening to these guys talk. Let me tell you something. When you're in a room with Ed Jones or Randy White or Leroy Selman, guys like that, and they're talking about playing a technique, all the things that you thought you knew about playing football, you didn't. You did it with just power and guts and just being better than the next guy in college. When you get to the NFL, the steps, the hand placement, the leverage, keeping your pads low, staying on the 3 technique, not cheating, not getting too head up where you get blocked, getting the hands off you. All of that. These guys are talking. You're like, shit. No idea what they're talking about. No idea what they're talking about. I think teams are going to challenge the Philadelphia Eagles right out of the gate with 2 things: blitzing and run the ball right at them. I'm going to run the ball right at Jalen Carter. and Jordan Davis. You know what's going to happen, though? If those two guys play like they did in the first 6 games of the year, it's going to help your football team a lot. It's going to help you a lot. If they get out like they did against New England, Minnesota, where they were just cramming teams and jamming teams up in the middle. I think at one time they were first in the league, giving up only 64 yards rushing. If they can get out to that, man, is that going to help your O and your back end and your linebacker play? If those two dudes get out like they did, Jordan Davis got out to a great start last year. And if Carter gets out to the same way, man. And you have Cam Hayward in there, whew, that's going to help you a lot. I'll tell you what, I'll be doing this. You add Cameron Hayward to your defensive tackle position, that moves that number up a bit for me. That moves you in the room a little bit more towards being one of the top 3 rosters. Okay? I mean, I still think that Detroit and San Francisco have a better roster than you because of your defense. But you put Cameron Hayward on that side of the ball, shit, dude, you've increased it multiple times by doing that. He is a great player. I played against his pop. Tell you what, and I say this to you guys all the time, all due respect, Ironhead, I got a knot on the back of my neck for the rest of my life. This guy gave me a pinched nerve, and I'm reminded of it every night to this day when I played against him at Pitt. He was a train. Unbelievable. 280 pounds, and he ran 4.5s. And he could move. Man, he could move. That guy was so good. I think he's from Passaic, New Jersey. He was so good. Get this, Xander. Ironhead was so good a player. Pitt gave him a scholarship and said, hey, what do we have to do to get you to come here? He goes, give my brother one. His brother wasn't very good. Pitt gave his brother a scholarship. That's how good he was in high school. He's a good football player, man. Died of brain cancer. God rest his soul. What a great dude, too, man. That guy, hey, that guy could play, man. Ironhead Hayward. Woof. Seals, you and Hollis put out good content on how a D-line needs good hand and feet play. Have to have it. If you don't have good hands and good feet, you cannot play defensive tackle. You can't play good defensive play. Hell, you can't really play any position on the field if you don't have good hands. Think about when you're a defensive back and you got to take on a wide receiver coming up to you and you got to jam him. Dude, if you can't jam it, you know what made Darrelle Revis so good? Darrelle Revis would line up. Sean, think about this. Darrelle Revis would line up across from a wide receiver like a Larry Fitzgerald. You know what he would do? Because his hands were so fast. He would jam you on the inside, forcing you on an outside release. And then he would herd you to the sidelines. He was defending you with 2 people, the sidelines and him. How many times did you ever see Darrelle Revis give up an inside release? Never would he give up inside release. He would grab you and take the 15-yard penalty or the 5-yard penalty for the jam on the 5 yards before he'd let you have an inside release. That's how you get beat. He'd jam your ass. That guy was so good with his hands, his feet. Man, he was an electric corner. Tell you what, I know Dion is one of the greatest, if not the greatest cover corner, but one of the greatest corners of all time is Darrelle Revis. He could freaking play, man. Okay, he can play. Okay, I would think that the offense play aggressively early to get the lead by running or passing. That would help the defense to concentrate on teams passing more to get back into games. Just my thoughts. Sounds good, Hurts. D Hurts, I like it. I think they have to have ball control out of the gate. I do. Here's something else, too. I think tight ends are going to test the linebackers. You know, I heard Xander and John McMullen, and I heard Jeff Kerr. Those guys are so right. Guys, please. Devin White, is as close to not making the team as he is to making the team. If that guy screws the jar on right and he's ready to play and you get a good season out of him, fantastic. But just like John said, top flight all pro linebackers don't sign 1-year deals for $3 million. Remember, follow the money. There's a reason that Patrick Queen cost $18 million. That was the market value for him. The market value for Devin White was a 1-year, $3 million deal. That's nothing. Your kicker makes as much. There's more, and you have more value in your kicker's contract than you do in Devin White's. The Eagles don't really believe in that guy. So why should you? Or is it, listen, if it's wishful thinking, that's fine. It's exhibition football. It's preseason ball, and you're hoping the kid finds himself. Nobody wants to see Devin White fail, but he's failed for 4 years. Hoss, when you're benched for a UDFA and you were the 5th pick in the draft, you got a problem staying in this league. Okay? Dan, do you think Philly runs a dime package? I think Vic's going to run that. And I wrote this down here. Let me get through some of the things that I want them to work on during training camp in the exhibition season as I get ready for September. This is what they're going to do. Now, let me ask you this. Here's my corners. This is what I want my secondary to look like. Slay, Gardner Johnson, Blankenship, and Quinyon Mitchell. That'll be my secondary. I'm going to go after Quinyon Mitchell. I'm going to go after Slay immediately. And I'm going to test the middle of the field because Gardner Johnson gets out of position a lot. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to run a shitload of crossing routes and see how they handle it. Last year, they ran into each other a lot. In the Super Bowl in 23, or the 22 season, 23 Super Bowl, that's one of the things that Andy Reid did to them was having those crossing routes, and it confused Bradbury. And I'm going to attack Quinyon Mitchell. I'm going right at him. Okay? Right at him with crossing routes. Let's see if he can see it. Let's see if he can do that. Okay? So once again here, things you have to work on heading into camp tomorrow. Hurts got to be better on the blitzes. They've got to come up with a scheme. They've got to be able to threaten the middle of the field this year. They're going to be threatened by tight ends this year at linebacker. Are the Eagles. So, a lot to be said. Before I bring Angelo on, I want to read Angelo something that was said yesterday, and I started my program out today with this. And because we know a lot of folks over with the Washington Commanders, this is what Brian Johnson had said. Brian Johnson is telling, who's now the passing coordinator, assistant head football coach for the Washington Commanders, that last year, 95% of the play calls were by Nick Sirianni and not him. And he said that this was constantly a problem for Jalen and myself when we were making a game plan, that Nick would interfere, and it was 95% of the time Nick would interject on the game plan, and that was what became a frustrating thing for Jalen Hurts. Diane Rossini, 2 days ago, reported that there was a disconnect, and it was manifesting from week 1 all the way through the end of the season, that him and the quarterback had a problem. Now, Diane Rossini is a respected NFL journalist and reporter that covers that, who has no real affiliation, I think, I'll ask Angelo here in a minute, to the Philadelphia Eagles. So why would she make that comment? So to me, now you're starting to get it nationally, and you're also starting to get Brian Johnson with that comment that you had Nick Sirianni